Welcome to another episode of the Counterculture Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, along with my great friend, co-host Taylor. And really, I gotta say, we just gotta jump right into it because I'm really excited. We have a wonderful guest on with us tonight. Obviously, this is one of our, Counter Talk episodes where we have someone on with us to discuss cultural current events and things like that. And again, I can't be more excited, so I'm not gonna wait any longer. So, Carla, why don't you go ahead, just introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are, and just so that people get to know you, and we'll go from there.
Awesome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I kind of feel like being a happily married woman in America is kind of like the ultimate counterculture right now.
Agreed.
Yes.
I tell you, it's you wouldn't have thought, but this is where we are. So I'm Carla. I live in the Midwest. I'm in my mid 50s, and I'm going to be a grandma for the first time this year.
Wow.
So
Excellent.
we're working on raising the next generation. One more removed from my dear husband Paul and I and our 11 children. My oldest will be 30 next week. 30 years old. Um, then my other boys are 28, 15, 11, um, and a son who died when he was 2.5 years old. That was my son,
Mm.
Henry, who was our first adoption. I have 6 biological children, and we adopted 5 children. Um, we adopted Henry back in 2011. He was 1.5 years old. We met him in a Ukrainian orphanage. He weighed 11 pounds and
Mm.
was in pretty rough shape. We knew he was a special needs child, but we didn't realize he had a super, super rare genetic diagnosis. And despite our best efforts, he passed away in November of 2012. Um, so that's you know, we had 5 boys, 6 girls. Um, my oldest daughter is 23, and then a 20-year-old, and then 17, 13, 9. And then my youngest, Hannah, is 2 years old. We adopted her summer of 2020 in the height of COVID.
Mm.
Wow.
And she has another super rare genetic diagnosis. It's something called Harlequin ichthyosis that only 50 people in the world have.
Holy
Um,
cow.
so we're just blessed to have her in our family. She's hanging out with Daddy right now. He is literally her favorite person in the entire world. I become chopped liver when Daddy walks in the door. We have one of those like keypads on the front door because I have too many children and they don't remember keys. So I
Mhm.
decided I'd go all Airbnb and just get a lock code on my front door so the kids could get in and out and I wouldn't have to worry about that. And she hears the beeps going off right around 5 or 6 o'clock and just waits. And then when he opens the door, it's Daddy, Daddy, and she gets all excited and we all run to him. And I then am chopped liver the rest of the night. So we have quite a full household here, although only 6 children live with us right now. I only have 6 kids. Some nights there's
Only.
only like, 8 of us for dinner, and I go to my husband, "Is it even worth making dinner if there's only 8 people to cook for?" I
Man,
don't
that's like
maybe
a
it's not even worth it. I think we should just have leftovers or something.
it's
He's
like
like, "No,
feeding an
no,
army.
8
It's like a
people is
cafeteria.
worth." Yeah, he's like, "8 people's worth cooking for." No, that's good. Um, in fact, also at various times, my mother-in-law lived with us and passed away a couple years ago.
Mm.
I'm Italian, believe it or not, Northern Italian. Uh, my dear Italian Nonna lived till the age of 103 in her own home till she was 101, and was
Wow.
There you go.
completely independent except for those last year and a half, 2 years of her life. Sharp as a tack till the day she went. Very smart woman. Um, and again, like I didn't think back in high school in the 80s that I would find this much joy and satisfaction in the nurturing part of my nature, right?
Hmm.
Um, I was a smart girl. I got awesome grades. I loved school. I loved to participate. I loved to excel. So that was back in the 80s, right? The day of working girl with the big
Mhm.
shoulder pads.
Yeah.
I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, right? That was what we were getting back in the day. Like, you go girl, you're going to go to college and you can do whatever you want. And my dad was a lawyer, and my mom, although she'd gone to college and she also was super super smart and she actually taught for 2 years, she was then home with the kids. And I kind of alternated at various times in my life. Um, for a while, I had always said I want to be a lawyer like my dad and a mom like my mom. And like that was though hard to reconcile with the message I was getting from the culture, which was like you
Mhm.
got to pick one. And picking being the mom is the loser choice. Okay? So then towards the end of my high school and while I was doing very well, I was a national merit scholar, getting some offers. I played some basketball. I'm actually 6 feet tall, but my knees were kind of cruddy at that point. So I decided to go all in on the academics, getting some scholarship offers. Um, I decided I was just going to go full tilt. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to law school. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have children. I'm going to be the youngest woman partner in a firm. And I'm going to go on maybe to be the first woman president of the United States. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Probably that was also edged on, in addition to the culture, by the fact that my mom had my youngest two siblings when I was a sophomore in high school and a senior in high school. So
Oh
there were a
wow.
lot of little babies around, and guess what? They took a lot of time. They were
Mhm.
loud. My mom was really tired. And like, I loved my younger siblings. They were great, but it was also like, oof. Like, I knew what raising kids was about.
Mhm.
I knew the time, the effort, and I wasn't sure how. I was like, "Oh, maybe better to wear those shoulder pads every day and go to work, make a big ton of money, and, have everyone think I'm fabulous." So, so I ended up going to Loyola University in Chicago. I grew up Catholic. My dad went to Loyola, and then he went to Northwestern Law School. Um, so I went to Loyola and got accepted to a special program to do 3 years of college and then 3 years of law school. It's normally 4 years of college, then 3 years of law school. I did like it was got accepted to a condensed program. And I'm like, I am on my way. I'm going to be the youngest person to graduate. I'm going to get all this done. And then God laughed because the second person I met when I moved into my dorm was my now husband.
Wow.
The second person. The first one was a girl. The first guy I meet at this Jesuit run dorm, it was where students ran it themselves. We had a priest who lived with us. You got to go to mass there. You kind of had to sign a letter. You'd be a responsible human being. You'd help with the cooking, you'd help with the cleaning. Um, and he was the treasurer of that hall. And he was sitting down writing on his desk. I think he was doing the accounts for the hall. And the president of the hall, who was the girl, Louisa, walked me in, and there was this blonde tousled head, and she said, "Hey, Dobbs, this is Carla. She's a freshman who's moving in with us." And he put his head up and he said, "Hi," and he stuck his head down and kept writing. And I'm like, I think he's cute. I think. Well, later I found out that his window overlooked the driveway where you had to pull in and unload all your stuff. And my family had a Chevy Suburban at that point. And of course, with the first child going off to college, my mother, my father, and my 7 younger siblings, including my then 8-month-old youngest brother, all came to drop me off at college. And apparently, it was quite the thing in the hall that day as everyone watched us unloading, wondering, like, was this like a clown car? How many people were coming out of that car? When you see them at the circus and they're all like running around,
Yeah.
and all my mom and dad are telling all my siblings to pick up my stuff and carry it. And so apparently I piqued his interest. We were dating a couple weeks later. Um, and within a few months, like, we knew this was going to be serious and this was going to be forever. He was 1 year older than me, so he was a sophomore, I was a freshman. Um, but he's like, I'd like to like finish college first before I get married. I'm like, I see your point. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we should at least both finish undergrad, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend a 3 to 4 year long engagement
Engagement. Yeah.
process. It's not a good idea. We did pretty well the first couple years. The last year and a half got tough. I mean, you just you want to be with that person all the time. You miss them. By the last year, so we got officially engaged Christmas of his senior year, and he moved out of the dorm and went back home to start saving money and working extra so
Hmm.
we could get married. And I moved back to my parents' house. And instead of living 5 minutes walk away from the school, we were both living over an hour away. I'd drop him off at his house in his car. I'd take it home to my house, stay overnight because I live farther away from the school than he did. Then I'd pick him up the next morning. Then we'd go. I mean, thank God for young love. I have no idea how we did that. Like it was a
Yeah.
punishing, brutal schedule between
Yeah.
working and going to school. Um, and then he was an education major and was going to be a high school teacher. But he started taking some political science classes with me because I was straight on that law school track. And he was a big history buff. So I'm the oldest in my family. Paul's the youngest in his family. Paul's dad is a World War II veteran. He was in the Battle of the
Wow.
Bulge. So Paul is a big history buff because of that of his dad. Yeah, like
Wow.
right, like isn't that
That's
like you
wild.
think
That's
it's so
amazing.
long ago and it's not. Again,
Yeah.
it's that's just kind of how that worked because I'm the oldest and I had younger parents and he had older parents. Um, so he came to poli sci classes with me. There was a guy who was a commander in the Naval Reserve who he started talking history with. Paul was very interested in the military. And I remember one day he said, he asked Paul to stay after class, and Paul told me later, Commander Williams told him, you know, do you really want to be a history teacher? I think that chick you're with is going to law school. Maybe you should go to law school too. Paul's like, I don't know. And he's like, you go to law school and you get in the Navy and you sign up for the Judge Advocate General's program. And then you go through law school and you've got a Navy commission waiting for you. And you go in the Navy and you get to be a Navy JAG Corps lawyer. Like, my husband grew up super, like, really poor. Like
Mhm.
my dad was a lawyer who worked in a bank, right? We had a gazillion children in my family, but we lived a nice middle class lifestyle. My
Mhm.
husband's dad was a often drunk, um, difficult minded, uh, kind of cantankerous guy who worked half the
Mm.
year as a cement mason and didn't work half the year. You know,
Mhm.
to where my husband remembers being a child and his mom sitting at the table weeping over the bills because she had no money to pay all the bills that were in. So my husband, like there were things that he just like hadn't thought about, and
Mhm.
that really got his imagination going. And he also then applied. I already had my admission to law school. He applied to law school. He didn't get in the same law school I was going to at first. He got waitlisted, but then we didn't know what we were going to do. We were like, do we have to wait 2 more years to get married? We didn't want to do it. Anyway, the Lord was very kind. He got in. We both then jumped together. We both started law school together. We spent our first year of law school as an engaged couple. We got married June between first year and second year, to where we showed up the next day of second year and we had a professor that we had again and that we'd had the previous year. And he's like, Mr. D. And he goes, Carla D? And I go, yep, married over break. And he's like, congratulations. And, is a very
Yeah.
precise older gentleman.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Um, and we went to law school the last 2 years together, um, really kind of counting down to the day when that naval commission would pop on because we had no health insurance. Now these kids can stay on the health insurance till they're 20, right? Isn't it 26
Is it
years old?
27?
No,
27. I
it's
think
20. 26, 27, something like that. You know,
And
almost
you
30 and you're on.
yeah, like, and you can be married and stay on your dad's, insurance. We were not only were we so we were married, number 1, so my dad's like, "You're getting married. I don't have to pay for your tuition anymore." And I'm like, "Right, that's fair." So, I had a
Mm-hmm.
decent scholarship, but I still had to take out loans. And I mean, maybe that was my first clue that things were really changing, was
Yeah.
that a bunch of my friends said, "Well, why are you getting married then? You need your dad's insurance and he'll keep paying for it." I'm like, "Because I want to be with Paul." And they're like, "Well, why don't you just live with him?" I'm like, "Number
Mm.
1, he wouldn't ask that of me. Like that wouldn't have been something." I go, "Number 2, you think my dad'd still pay the tuition if I was living with a guy?"
Right. Yeah.
No.
Right.
No. It didn't even cross our minds, but, like, there was the first shift there. And again, while we were very both happy to finish law school, and, we literally counted down the days till when he was officially covered, under his Navy commission,
Yeah.
so that we could work on starting a family. Like literally, we had like a calendar on the wall.
Wow.
Like when are we covered by insurance? So 9 months from now, like that was like the thing.
Well, it's funny
Yeah.
because
So
people don't think about that.
Yeah.
Like this generation, they're like, "Oh, let's just have a kid or this or that." I mean, me and my wife, we got in trouble with our first because she was still under her father for insurance, just like we were just talking about.
yeah,
There was no need for her to get it through work because it was easier
right.
to stay under her dad. And so she called her dad's insurance, made everything was good. Like, is it okay to have this baby and it'll be insured and all that? And there was some miscommunication where they said yes, but I guess they were thinking she was talking about something different. So we go through, have the baby, and then suddenly we're about to, get released a couple days later in the hospital. All of her bills and stuff were covered, but the baby, like all the
Oh,
what do
nursery
you call it?
charges
Nursery charges,
and
but any of the doctors that came to look at the baby,
yeah.
what do you call pediatricians? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
pediatrician.
Pediatricians. Yeah.
We were getting full price bills for that, and so it was this weird thing. When luckily through my work, I was able to do a life event change and
Yes, yes.
grandfather
Yeah.
a lot of those bills. But again, it's one of those things that this generation doesn't think about that. They're like, let's just have a
No.
kid.
Well, a
Yeah.
lot. Most of them don't even want to have kids.
Oh,
So.
that's a whole other thing.
Good point. Very good point. So, so we had 2 boys while we were in the Navy. Husband was told this. He actually got deployed back in 1994, when there was the possible invasion of Haiti happened. And there were
Mm,
Haitians jumping in the water, thought they could get to Florida in bathtubs. He got deployed on the USNS Comfort out of Bethesda, Maryland.
mm-hmm.
I had a 22-month-old and a 2-month-old, and he got a call on a Monday, and he was down in Norfolk, Virginia on a Friday with no idea when he was going to be back. Another thing the younger generation doesn't know is what it was like to have a spouse deployed before these came around.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm.
Right.
It was like he was dead to my toddler son. We didn't talk to him on the phone for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, there were letters, like letters help a 2-year-old,
Right. Yeah.
he started sleepwalking, already here his mom has this new baby 2 months ago. He and his dad are best buds, right? Because I'm busy with the baby.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden dad ups and disappears. Like, he started again having night terrors, sleepwalking. I'm sleep deprived between a baby, trying to keep this toddler from going up and down a 3-story townhouse we were renting. So I lasted about 6 weeks and begged to go back home to my parents till he came back.
Yeah.
So we did. Then he got back. Then President Clinton deployed them yet again 2 months later. That time I didn't even wait. I just went back home to the
Yeah.
Chicago
Right.
area. And then he was finally back. But the first year of my second son's life, my husband was only there like 4 months. So that was
Wild.
very challenging, very wild. But it makes you kind of grow up kind of fast, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't have family around. I did finally go to family. Um, but again, you kind of have to suck it up and be like, you got to do what you got to do. And there's nothing like the military, both for men and women, to kind of get them in a better mindset. And that's a mindset I think is a little bit lacking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, Paul's choices after that, if he wanted to stay in the Navy, which he did love it, but he was being offered for the whole family to go to South Korea or for him to do a year on a sub or aircraft carrier. Neither of which I was really jamming on, to tell you
Right.
the
Yeah.
truth. Did not like either of those options. So he's like, well, you know what? He was a Navy prosecutor. He has a very major sense of law and justice. They can assign you to do anything. He's like, you won't want me as a defense attorney. It's not, you won't like me and I won't do the best I can. And they're like, good, you can be a prosecutor at this thing. So that's what he did, along with a bunch of estate planning for service members. But he's like, well, I'll just go get a lawyer job in Chicago and we'll go back home to our families. He could not get a job. He must have sent out 100 resumes back in 94, 95. Couldn't get a job. Like, I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm trying to remember what the economy was like back then. It must have not been great. But what then happened was the Oklahoma City bombing then happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the federal government realized, shoot, we haven't hired new people in the FBI for like 4 or 5 years. There had been a hiring freeze on. So they were really short on people. Well, they love ex-lawyers. They love ex-military. My husband heard about it in the National Naval Medical Center that the FBI was looking for people. And he applied. And within 6 months, he was heading to Quantico, Virginia to go to the training to become an FBI agent as his next career.
Wow.
So I went back home again with the boys
Yeah. Right.
for those 3 months. It's actually now 4 months of training, but it was 3. And you can be stationed anywhere in the United States. They don't promise you anywhere, but you can rank them from 1 to 54. Our 1 was Chicago. Our 54 was New York City. And we just ended up getting Chicago. We ended up moving near our families. At that time, the Bureau went to a policy that stopped moving people around every couple years because it was too expensive to keep doing all those relocations. So he ended up staying in. We've spent his entire career in the Chicago area. He's now a supervisor of a regional agency here in Chicago. He was in charge of the federal emergency response team for 10 years of that time. Like, he was the guy who told the SWAT team when to go in. Lots of 9/11 related stuff.
Wow.
And again, like, we had decided early on when we got back, because I was still an attorney, but I had not practiced because we'd been moving all over the United States. Well, now we're going back to Chicago, right? My dad's a lawyer. People are calling me, Carla, you're a lawyer. Can you do this, do that? So we like kind of had to make a decision, like, how am I going to do my career, if at all, right? We decided to go all in on his career, and I would go all in on being a wife and a mom, and I would treat the practice of law as my side gig, basically. Now,
Okay.
like, there was no way to do that back in the mid 90s. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was no Zoom meetings. There were no virtual stuff. So, like, kind of had to make a way to figure it out. Well, the number one thing was my dad retired from his job at a bank, and he still wanted to do something because he was younger and I still had young siblings at home and that he needed to pay for. He said, why don't we open up a shop together? We'll call it his last name, my last name. We call it F&D, with our names in there. Call it F&D Limited. I said, what do you mean limited? He goes, we're limited in the amount of work we want to do and the amount of time we want to spend here. We're very limited.
Yeah.
Right? But of course it was a limited liability company, but my dad was very droll like that. He was very
Yeah.
funny. I'm super Italian. My dad speaks Italian. We had a lot of Italian speaking clients who did real estate and estate planning, did commercial residential real estate. So kind of how that would end up working was my dad would meet with people during the day. He'd go do stuff, have people. We had an office for a while. If I had to come in, I'd usually bring whatever baby I had with me. Sometimes I'd cross with a client, sometimes I wouldn't. But then we get together, do our stuff, and then I'd go home to my computer. I'd put babies to bed at 9 p.m. and I would draft wills, trusts, and commercial leases between 9 a.m. and 1 a.m. most nights.
Holy cow.
It was great. But
Burning the wick at both ends, but yeah.
Yeah.
so it was super burning the wick at both ends, especially as my husband advanced in his career and
Mhm.
got more and more responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
and would have to leave at 4 a.m. with body armor on to go bust up
Oof.
a crack house,
Yikes.
where he'd be on a stakeout for days at a time. Sometimes I wouldn't see him. Or he'd come home and go, I have to leave to go to Europe tomorrow. See ya. But like that's rough, especially once you
Yeah.
get past the standard 2.2 children, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So at that point, when that sort of stuff was happening, we had 3 kids. So we had the 2 boys right away. Um, the third one, we weren't doing anything not to. We weren't doing anything to. But all of a sudden, my husband was having some symptoms, got sick. We kind of didn't know what was going on. My husband actually had cancer at age 31. He had testicular cancer. It had
Whoa.
Wow.
spread up to his lungs. He had the tumor the size of an NFL football attached to his gut in his
Goodness
stomach.
gracious. Holy cow.
And all of a sudden, it's like, holy crud, what was that? He had a bunch of surgeries. He had chemo for 4 months. And we were told we'd have like a 5% chance of having more children. So, like, okay, we'll see what's going there. That was when we first looked into adoption, actually. We had gone to an adoption agency meeting because we thought we had 2 little boys. And like back in the 90s, like there were a lot of little girls in China waiting to be
Mm,
adopted. We said, we have 2
yeah.
little boys, we'll adopt a little girl from China. And they said, oh, you had cancer? Yeah, you'd have to be cancer free for 10 years before China's going to approve you to adopt.
Whoa. What?
And I was like, seriously? Like, we're going to be old. We're going to be like 40. Oh my gosh. And again, God has a sense of humor as I adopt a newborn when I'm like 53 years old, right?
Right. Well, it's just wild to me that you think, especially when you think about the regime of the CCP, that they would have this arbitrary requirement for a person to be cancer free for 10 years when they were doing what they were doing to mostly little girls in the country of China. Is just that's wild to me.
Well, especially
Yeah.
for someone who is just trying to help in the first place to have such strict criteria. It's like I was going to ask you
Yeah.
that
We can
because you
talk more about international adoption because, again, I do a lot of volunteer work in that realm
Well, I
now,
know
and
you said
it's
you're a
terrible.
board of directors, which is we could probably spend 2 hours on that. But one thing I think is really because I think especially when you look at culturally when you think of young people today, right? And so just like for me, I'm 28. I've been married for 5 years to my wife. We have 3 kids. Y'all are at 7 years married. You and
I
Brittany?
think we just passed. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years, right? And so like for us, we're very abnormal for a
Right.
lot of people our age. Like again, most of my friends are still not married and may not even probably don't even have a girlfriend or boyfriend.
I know people
Yep.
my age who are like still living with their parents and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
it's
or
super
they split
common.
like a house between like 3 other guys, and so they keep the rent
Mm-hmm.
down, which that's a whole different issue with the cost of living and everything right now. But there's no, I guess I don't want to say incentive, but there's no like sense of urgency for people to have those sense of like family traditional
Well,
values.
the incentive is to not. I would
Hmm.
say is to not grow up. That the incentive is to have this perpetual adolescent sort of attitude.
Well, this is the shift that happened, right, gentlemen? Because in the 90s, once I hit that third, so then through the grace of God, a year after my husband finished chemo, I was pregnant to like where his oncologist didn't believe him until we
Yeah.
pictures. Like, yeah.
Wow.
In fact, she was so disbelieving, she told him she could paternity test the baby, and he wouldn't.
No. Wow.
I'm like, people, come on, we don't do that stuff here. He he brought the picture that looked exactly the same, like, as the other 2 children. He's like, "I have one standard issue child," and that's what she popped out. So yeah, it was terrible, but, like, once we had that 3rd child and it was a girl, like, everyone's like, "You're done. That's it."
Yeah.
That was where we were, like, 20 years ago. Like, 2 or 3, maybe 3 if the first 2 all both were the same sex, you could maybe go 3. But, like, it's like, why would you wanna keep working? Like, the people at Paul's work were like, you, because 'cause we're very outdoorsy people. My husband
Hmm.
was a new guide in college. He's hiked the John Muir Trail. He's a backpacking beast. we just went on a backpacking trip for our 33rd anniversary, with everything on our backs out in the desolation wilderness in California. Like, this is what we do for fun. They're like, yeah, one of his friends at work was like, yeah, we're not having any more kids. We want to be able to go have fun. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. But that was where we were 20 years ago. Like,
Mhm.
stop with the kids because now you got your career and fun. Like, that's enough. Well,
Mhm.
now we're at a different point. We're like, don't have them at all. Don't even get married. Don't even have them. Um,
Hmm.
and this is something that I now see, and why I jumped into the good old Instagram and YouTube fray, because I saw the problems now my children are having because
Hmm.
of the societal shift that happened. Um, again, we were so thankful to have this third baby. It was another 5 years before we just thought it was a one-off. We thought we had a one-time miracle with my daughter post-cancer. We're going to be happy with the 3 we have, whatever. And then again, God laughed at me yet again. I had other babies at ages 37, 39, and 42.
Hmm.
Like we called them the first batch and the second batch. Okay. So, like, I said, like, I never got a break because my friends who just had older kids, they get the older kids off to school and then they'd have all day to themselves. Well, I got the older kids off to school and then I had little kids all day. And then I had to go get the big kids and drive the big kids around to all their things and
Yeah.
then put little kids to bed, then I couldn't get up earlier than the little kids and I couldn't go to sleep later than the big kids and I was trashed. So, um, so that was when I quit, when I found out I was pregnant with baby number 5. I was almost 40. I was super exhausted from keeping up that schedule of all the drafting at night. And just one night I just burst into tears at my husband in the couch and said, like, I can't do this anymore. And he's like, well, stop. I'm like, I can't. You'll hate me. My dad will hate me. Everyone's gonna hate me. He's like, "It's fine. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it." Like so calm. My husband is the calmest, mellowest. I'm a little excitable. He's a rock. He's
Hmm.
just that's why he ran the government's emergency response team for 10 years. Like nothing phases this man. But
Hmm.
um but that was where I started learning a little bit, like, because I had ramped myself into quite a tizzy, and the amount of control and trying to kind of live half the time in this masculine law world and half the time in my feminine mom world, like,
Hmm.
was making me like bipolar, right? Like, I
Yeah.
wasn't doing either of them well. And that was when I decided I needed to make a change. And again, I was vulnerable enough to express to him, I can't do this. Are we can we do this where I can just be a mom and a wife for a while and then we'll see what happens? And he was on board 100%. And it, the irony was that ended up being in the summer of 2008, right before the massive real estate crash. I probably wouldn't have had any work to do even if I was working because the market was
Yeah.
dead for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Then I had another baby in 2009. And then again, I was in my early 40s, and but by that point, I had been reading a lot. And I think, Christian, this is maybe what I talked about when your wife was listening. Like, I went on a quest. Like, I am a researcher, right? I
Hmm.
am I want to find out who the experts are and what's the best way to do something.
Hmm.
So I talked to a bunch of women whose marriages I admired, whose mothering I admired, and I said, I'm going to figure out how to do this. Now we had a happy marriage, don't get me wrong, but, like, I felt like I needed to take it to the next level with 6
Yeah.
kids and a super busy husband. Like, I wanna devote this part of my life now to this. So, just started investigating. I used to listen to Dr. Laura back when she was on in the afternoon. You guys all remember Dr. Laura Schlesinger? She used
Sounds
to
familiar, but
introduce she had, like, a call-in self-help, Dear Abby kind of talk show on the radio. And
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
she said her tagline was, and I'm my kid's mom. She was a
Mm-hmm.
super feminist. She was never going to get married, never have any kids. She got married super late, was able to have one kid. And that kid was like the focus of her life. To like, she didn't go on the radio. Her slot on the radio was after she dropped him off at school and then picked him up. that afternoon. That was when she worked. And like
Yikes.
she wrote a book called The 10 Stupid Things Women Do to Mess Up Their Marriage. And like I saw myself in some of those 10 things,
Mm,
right? Um I I I tended to be controlling about things. I wanted them done the right way, which was my way. I um I had a hard time being like a little more cute and vulnerable with my husband cuz like as the oldest of 8 kids, right? My personality and my default was I can get things done. I can be in charge. I'll do things to make people happy. And you know, like that's usually not what a masculine man is looking for. Is someone to do that. I mean, he likes having things done for him in a nice way, but
mm-hmm,
like
Mhm.
that it was a little bit of a competing energy, I would say. He would
mm-hmm,
probably admit as well. Um Another really good book that came up at the time was by Laura Doyle called started out being called The Surrendered Wife, which when my friend told me to read that, I'm like, "Whoa, what? Surrendered? What are you talking about?" She kind of updated it and codified her principles a little more, and now it's called The Empowered Wife. And she
mm,
actually has a podcast that's excellent, like several coaching platforms, Facebook stuff. Um, but she really talks about how you can use these 6 intimacy skills to really kind of make your marriage the best it can be so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special. That's like what
mm,
I wanted. I didn't want to be like the go to gal to get everything done and, be the one who checked the most things off the list every day. Cause that was how I measured my metric. I was very in that super achievement space. Like, how many
mm-hmm.
leases can I get done in a day? I was running half marathons at that point too. How much exercise can I do? How much work can I do? Like, what can I do? Like, like that's an exhausting place for anyone to be much less a woman and a mother. Honestly, I'll tell that to anyone, and I tell that to women now because don't learn from my mistakes. Learn earlier than I did.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting about that too is, my and I will say my wife is like a ginormous fangirl of you. She like before I drove over here, she's like, I cannot wait to hear this. I'm so excited you finally get her on. So like my wife loves the crap out of you. Um but I think, what's really interesting about what you said is I think I would say, I think a key
Yes,
for
Dad.
anyone
Yeah,
to take
right
from
here.
too is, you know, and I was actually talking to Christina about this the other day, is that marriage is very difficult. Anyone that says that marriage isn't hard is a bad liar. Because and so because of that, it's imperative upon you to do the things possible to work on making your marriage a great marriage, because great marriages don't just happen.
This
To your point,
is
yeah, like you said, like
so
it's
true.
it's you have to
Marriage
find
is work.
resources. Yeah, you have to find resources in whether whether it's podcasts, books, whatever it is for you, whatever it helps you. You have to put work into it, because if not, it can fall apart really easily, especially when the overall culture now basically looks at the institution of marriage and thinks it should be just demolished and done away with. When you don't have a culture that encourages marriage to begin with, you have so many things going against you that you really need to do everything possible to make it work. Not only just make it work, but make it actually thrive and great, because no one wants to
Yes.
be in a crappy marriage, because we see plenty of examples from that,
Well, the
and
divorces started
Right.
amongst our friends when we hit like age 40. When I'm still have popping out babies,
that's
a
interesting.
lot of the friends who'd had their 2.2 children in their 20s, those kids were moving out. It ranged from actual hating each other to having nothing in common. So might as well split up to let's just live like roommates in our
Hmm.
house. And that's one of the reasons why my Instagram platform is called Don't Become Roommates. I
Right.
we started seeing so many people that even if they were staying, they were checked out from the intimate marital relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably, and again, we're we both are lawyers, we're both professional people. Like we're not talking about like people who are down here trying to like work their butt off to like pay the bills every month, right? We're talking
Mhm.
people who should have some bandwidth. They're taking nice vacations. They got nice cars. They got vacation homes, and they're still miserable
Miserable. Yeah.
in their marriages. Or between miserable to barely tolerating. Very
Mhm.
few people thriving and in there. So again, that's a societal shift, right?
Mhm.
That's
Right.
Right.
so but then what really then after I did this work, and I was so thankful I did, because that was when we decided to adopt my son Henry, and
Mhm.
he died 14 months after we brought him home. And,
Mhm.
if we didn't have that rock solid, thriving marriage, um, I'm sure you've heard the statistic that the divorce statistic amongst people whose children have died is like astronomical. It's like 80 to 90%.
I can't
Actually, I'd
imagine.
never heard that before. That's why. I mean, I'm
It's
not
huge.
shocked
It's
per se, but that's I've
huge.
never heard of that. Yeah.
It's huge. And we had a couple rough months after that. I mean,
Mhm.
men and women grieve very
Differently.
differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they heal at different rates too.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yes. And he had to get back to work in
Mhm.
days, and
Yep.
I was non-function. He just wanted to it broke his heart to see me unhappy. So all he wanted to do was try to make me happy. But when he
Yeah.
said, "Let's go on a vacation," I'm like, "How can we ever go on a vacation again in our whole lives? I don't want to go to Disney World and be happy. I'm miserable." It
Right.
Right.
felt
Yeah.
like it felt disloyal to me to go have fun with my other children because
Mhm.
he was
Yeah.
gone. Um, and I realized this was a rough dynamic we were negotiating. So I got a recommendation from someone I trusted, because I'll be frank, I don't trust most mental health professionals these days. I
Oh, I
don't.
Really?
wouldn't.
Why
I
not?
don't blame you.
But I got a recommendation from someone I trusted for a grief counselor, like a specifically someone who deals with grief. And
Mhm.
I went and spent a couple months there. And, you know, just your husband gets tired of seeing you cry. Like he just looked at me and goes like, "I can't watch you cry anymore." Like it just ripped his guts out, but I needed to cry more.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Well,
couldn't
I mean,
cry in
I
front of
feel
my
like
kids. Like where am I going to cry? So I went to a therapist office. I cried for like 2 months. It was great. I needed it. I needed it. That
well,
was
I
what
feel
I
like
needed.
Yeah.
as some men,
Yeah.
we feel like it's like our job to fix something, and a lot of times I feel like women, they just don't want to be fixed. They just want to be heard, and they want that time to heal.
That's what
So
I could go there and he'd go, "What are we doing for 45 minutes?" I go, "We're crying today." He'd be like, "It's your time." And I do
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
Yeah, right? Like, and it made so like that made sense. Like again, like my husband felt like he was failing by not
mhm.
helping me move through this quicker.
Yeah.
Like if and that's a huge thing. Again, my parents were married. My mom died last year. They were married 53 years, but they had some severe marital problems once the children had grown up and things
Mhm.
got bad. And it's like my mother could not be pleased. Whatever my dad did, it wasn't good enough. He didn't do it right. He had to do more. He didn't do it today. He only did it yesterday. It was a tough dynamic. Um,
Mhm.
and I see this a lot, and I try to help young wives with, you have to be pleasable. You will just you will make him miserable every day of his life if you say, "Well, you brought home flowers but not chocolates." Or "You got me the ring, but it wasn't the one I wanted."
Yeah.
Mm.
Or like, "You put the baby's romper on, but it was backwards." Like that's you can give a man information, but like when they come to you like, "You guys are great." Like, right? Like, aren't you really excited when you do something you think she's gonna like? Like cleaning up the kitchen. Like she's trashed and the kids have been all over, and you're like, "I'm gonna clean the kitchen." And then you're just like, you're waiting like a kid, like,
Like
"Is she gonna see the
like
kitchen?"
Yeah.
Like,
Tell
like
me
right?
a
how
pat on the
awesome I am.
back.
Tell me
Yeah.
how awesome I am,
Yeah,
please.
right? Like,
Please.
and then she goes, "You didn't wipe the countertops and the baseboards
Yeah. Oh.
again."
See, I
Like
wasn't gonna guess the
That's
like,
a kill.
baseboard, but the
Oh, that's like
countertop.
yeah. It's gonna rip my
ah!
heart out.
Like still like I've seen, because I've done it, guys. I've been the one to do that, and I see the face fall. And I like it took me like women don't realize that, and they need older women to give them this scoop. So this was how this Don't Become Roommates 1989 thing started. First of all, I had boys in their 20s. Now my 28-year-old son, he's not dating anyone seriously. He's working on getting his life kind of in order and his stuff.
Mhm.
He's living in Tucson, Arizona, having a
Hmm.
great time, going hiking a lot. Great. My oldest son is a typical oldest child. He had goals for his life. Blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. He's like, I'm going to start dating, kind of seriously when I'm 23, 24. I want to find the woman I want to marry. I want to be married at the latest age 30. So he's a chatty guy like me. He takes more after his mother than his father. He's chatty. He would meet girls pumping gas at the gas station. He'd meet them while he was doing work stuff. He'd meet them while he's doing college stuff. He talks to anyone anywhere, and he'd get dates like crazy. And they never went past 2 or 3 dates. For the reason that on date 2 or 3, he asked them, well, he started out asking, are you Catholic? And that went to the wayside real quick. Then he'd like, are you Christian? By the end, he's like, do you believe in like a God? Because 90% of those women who were 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 were saying no. Nope,
Yeah.
I don't. I'm spiritual though.
Yeah. Spiritual, but not
Spiritual.
religious. Like, oh, you're the worst.
You got to have
Like,
some semblance of a foundation in common.
yeah.
Otherwise,
Well,
So
that's
how's
what
it
he's
you
going?
like,
find.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what you find. I think So I think two things. I'm curious, and that's where women today, young women specifically in their 20s, 30s, and you can even maybe range it into the 40s, are so unbelievably miserable, and it shows
It
all from their
shows
face to their
all the time.
attitude to everything. Because and for me, it's just a lot of it has there have been like you said, it kind of started really well. We don't really, it started in the 80s and 90s in a lot of ways, where this push of you know sure, you could be a mom, but then you could also, like you said, like you could be a partner at a law firm and all this kind of stuff. And no shame, right? There's nothing wrong with
Not
having
only no
goals.
shame, there was competition for who could come back from maternity leave the earliest.
Oh my god, that's so
Who
brutal.
could come into the office when the baby was 8 days old with the breast pump and be like, hey, who would be reading briefs during labor? No, that was your status, was like
Right.
Wow.
that. That was the
Right.
status move. And
Eh,
that's so it started with the sexual revolution in the 60s. And then
yeah.
once birth control jumped in, and then the death, then religion really went to the wayside, because even more traditional people who were raised Catholics, then the Catholic Church got even a little different than, that got different. We went down this slope to, then again, yeah, the 80s, if you're smart, you'd better not stay at home with your kids.
Yeah. Why would
That
you
was
do
when
that?
that
Yeah. Right.
really
Yeah.
went. Why would you do that? And then to the 90s, where like you can still get married, but don't have more than like 2.2 kids, and make sure you work. And then something happened around 2005, 2008, 2010 with this whole, marriage doesn't really mean anything. Doesn't mean
Mm.
a man and a woman anymore. That was, I think, the first
The
major
tip.
chink in
Yeah.
the armor,
Right. Well, they know
because once,
Birchfeld comes down,
yes.
and that kind of really does it. And so, what's really? Do you think that if girls were more encouraged to be moms and wives before anything else, doesn't mean they can't do other things, of course, but if that was the first focal point, thing that they would be the goal that they had, do you think we would find more girls would be young women would be much happier than they are now? Because for me personally, I think absolutely, and also young men would be happier, because I think they'd find women that were willing to be to have children. And for me, children, my three have brought me the greatest joy. I mean, they're the greatest joys of my life. Being a dad has been and a husband has been amazing. And I think a lot of the depression, the just miserable state that they're in, is because they lack that intimacy, right, with someone that is willing to raise children with them. Because there's something about not only being married, but when you decide, I'm going to raise children with this person, it just changes the game for you in a whole nother way. The marriage becomes a whole new game once you invite children into that.
So yeah, so I totally agree, but I'm gonna go at it maybe a slightly down a little bit of a countercultural rabbit hole, which
Ooh, I'm
again, I don't
excited.
think you're gonna disagree with me.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't have designed a better psyop to screw up further generations than convincing young men and young women to be in conflict with each other and to only use each other for sex.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So here, this is the problem. I get angry young men in my DMs all the time
Oh,
that are like,
I
Okay.
don't doubt it.
you're only like this because you're old. There's no 20-something women like this. I'm like, my 23-year-old daughter is a lovely human being and is starting to look seriously for a husband. And she's exactly the kind of trad woman you say you want. Oh, where am I going to meet her? I said, how about you go to church? Oh my God.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah,
What?
exactly.
Ew. Who wants to go to church?
Exactly.
Well, guess what, buddy? You're not meeting that kind of high quality woman
At a bar.
on Tinder
Yeah.
or on the bar you're going to. My daughter goes to a rock climbing gym, has joined a kickball team with a bunch of other young people who got transferred to the city she lives in, and she goes to church and hangs out with people in her church.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't talk to randos who are sliding into her DMs on Instagram. And she's not going to talk to a
Yes.
man that's so red pill mad that he's like, women all be hoes. Like, stop it. Cut it out. You're 20. How did you get this cynical and angry, dude? You're like 26, 27 years old. Stop it.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is where I find that cynicism coming from those 20-year-olds, it has a lot to do with the hookup culture of today, of things like Tinder, because the reality is those young men can't compete because they don't have a lot to offer on a monetary sense. Meaning, for the 22, 23-year-old girl that is in her prime, right, in multiple different ways, right, if she's being reached out to by a guy that is 30 years old and is making 60, 70, $100,000 a year doing whatever, and says, hey, let's go, do you want to go take a trip, do whatever, right, these guys in their mid-20s don't have that same sort of monetary ability, and so they get kind of pushed out, and so then they get bitter because our culture, truly the god of the culture is money. There's
Yes.
no question about that, because we've decided to replace God Himself, and that's where they're getting that just angry bitterness, where you're seeing it manifest itself. Whether it's, like I said, simple as they're going after you in your Instagram DMs, or to even more violent and horrific ways. Right? There's this huge
Well,
scale.
it's an attitude of selfishness.
Yes.
These girls aren't giving me what I want in the place I want, the moment when I want it. And my
Mhm.
son, who's now 30 and expecting our first grandchild with his lovely wife, who he met on
Congrats.
CatholicMatch.com.
That's where I met my wife, actually.
Did you? Yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the girls would then say, like, the second question would be, do you want to get married? Not immediately, anytime, say
Ever.
before you're 30. And they'd all go, hell no, I'm not getting married till I'm 35 or 40. 90% of them said that to him as a
Wow.
25, 26, 27-year-old man.
That's
And as a
insane.
man, he's like, what's the point? I'm not going to be dating you for 10 years. I
Right.
don't like, but it's out of selfishness. So you've
Yes.
got
They're yeah.
these immature boys who think they're men because they're sitting in, and they might be making Christian good money sitting there. Like, this boy was clearly, one of them who I was talking to the other day, was clearly making fab IT money. Smart
Hmm.
boy. Yet he was in between DMing me clearly while he was doing work. He couldn't talk in a complete sentence on our
Yep.
DM. It was 3 words at a time, 4 words at a time. Throw out an epithet. Do the, like, you don't talk to women like this. Old, young, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
you have no social skills, dude. I don't care how much money you make. You wouldn't be able to talk to my daughter in person.
That's
You
fair.
just
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And then here's my son, who wasn't making a ton of money, but had a stable career, saying, I'd like to get married before I'm 30. And all these 20-something girls, I got plenty of time for that later. He wasn't interested in later. He wasn't
Hmm.
interested in that. I gave him a subscription to Catholic Match for his birthday. He met some very nice girls. I said, dude,
Yeah.
you got to pre-qualify your women. You're wasting your time. You're going out with tons of girls, but they are not pre-qualified. And he dated a lot of girls. He met, like, talked to him a lot. if that talking worked out, he would make the effort to go meet them in person. He was actually a truck driver at the time. He was
Mm.
doing his 1 year long haul truck driving before getting a regional job. So he would
Yeah.
like make arrangements, meet them. Like no sparks happened until this gal who was down near St. Louis, who was number 3 of a family of 9, who was
There it
1
goes.
year older than him, so was very marriage minded. And they hit it off, chatting. And then he stopped on his truck one time and took her out to dinner. He didn't think he was going to see anyone on this trip, so he just had his trucker clothes. So he parked his cab early, went to the local Men's Warehouse, bought himself a suit coat, a nice pair of
There you go.
pants.
There you
He's
go.
like, I can't. I'm like, your mama done raised you right, boy. Nice job, son. Took her out to dinner. They stayed talking. Within 4 months, they were exclusive with each other. 2 months later, he brought her home. 6 months later, they were engaged. 7 months later, they were married. And like 9 months and 2 days later, the baby is coming along at the end of August,
That's
right?
what I'm
Like
talking about.
he's ecstatically happy. She's a lovely girl, and I think she likes him too. Like when he brought her home and like he was talking and telling a story and she looked at him like he was the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, girl, I'll love you forever. I can tell you love my boy. That's all I want. That's all we want.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell
Mm-hmm.
this to women all the time, whether they're in their 20s, their 30s, or 40, guess what? There's a lot of guys in their 40s and 50s who that first marriage broke up and they don't want to be alone. They don't want to have a 25-year-old girl who has nothing in common with them. If you're a woman of quality and you're willing to do like you can marry a quality man, but you've got to get your head on right. And
Mm.
your head on right means nothing in your life, ladies. I am a lawyer. Okay. I could go do whatever I wanted, and I have. I've done everything from part time to staying home full time to working a little bit here, working a little bit there. I hang out with some very high powered people when I did commercial real estate,
Mm-hmm.
millionaires, entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah.
The major source of happiness in your life will be your marriage and your family. And that goes for men and women. But
Yes.
I dare to say it is a different way relationally for us women. It's the way God made us. And I can be a very left brain woman and I can be the lawyer when I need to. But um, there is something that is nurturing and soft and maternal there that, like, when my husband leaves the house to go do his 12 hours or be gone for a few days, like, that part of his brain shuts off. He knows I've got that.
Mhm.
I can't leave like for 2 hours when I'm not worried that everything's going okay at home. Like, right? Like that's the difference. And when I know everything's going well at home, when I know he's got the majority of the money and what's going on with our family and he's leading that ship, that releases me and frees me to be the woman I am that is way more concerned about my children thriving and my husband being happy and well taken care of. And I became a bit of a Kevin Samuels devotee in the 6 months before he died. I just found him and I found his
Mm.
cultural commentary so spot on for what's wrong with men and women. And he said, women, you are either a man's kryptonite or his rocket fuel.
Mm.
And that just made such sense to me because people have asked us over and over, like, how's your husband do all the stuff he does at work? Like he took on that emergency response position. That was in addition to his regular caseload doing public corruption and white collar crime. This was like an
Wow.
extra. He didn't get paid extra for that. And he
Mm.
did it longer than anyone's ever done it in that division because he knew it
Wow.
needed to be done and there was no one else available to do it. And he would tell anyone, it's because I knew Carla had anything at home. I could
Mhm.
leave in the middle of the night and everything was going to be fine. I could disappear for 2 weeks. He had people on that team, whether a woman or a man, who would be like, it's 6 o'clock. Like, my husband's working late tonight. Like, I have to leave this op and go pick up a kid at daycare because it's closing. Like, there's something to be said for being able to devote that brain space as a man to taking care of the stuff, because you know you
Yes.
got a good woman at home, competent on her own, to take care of that, and that she's not going to nag at you, she's not going to yell at you that you didn't come home, and that you're and honestly, then when he's home, like, the priority is making sure things are good at home and he's happy at home. I never thought about that in my 30s. I thought he has things to do, I have things to do. We both get our stuff done, and yeah, we like each other and we'll hang out with each other and whatever. Like, I don't take that for granted anymore, guys. And
Mm-hmm.
no woman should. And I mean, I think honestly, I think you men are more intentional about that a lot of times than the women are. Like you need to nurture that relationship. Like, we get laughed at because they're like, "You guys still really like each other." Like, we really like each other. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the kids, like, roll their eyes when he pats my butt in the hallway. You know, when we, like, again, like, we hadn't gone on a little vacation on our own since before we adopted Hannah. Like, we moved heaven and earth to make that happen. We paid more in babysitting than the airfare, flights, and the stuff, because we went camping. We have mostly camping equipment, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I spent more on babysitting to make that happen.
Yeah.
I have a special needs little one. Like, I had to have the nurse there during the day and make sure everything was all right at night. Like, it was every minute of, and again, right? The control. Oh God, is everything going to
Right.
be okay? Is
How do you
everything going to
let
be
go?
okay? Is
Yeah.
everything going to be all right? Like, when my husband, like, looked at me overlooking that lake we were camped at and said, like, "This is the best thing in the world that's ever happened to me. The love of my life is sitting next to me, overlooking God's creation, and that you still will go to the effort to do this with me." He's like, "That just means the world to me." And
Mm.
I tell you, whatever your boss is telling you, whatever bonus shows up in your paycheck, that means nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
That level of emotional satisfaction, the young people don't know that that's what you can expect. They have only
Right.
been told that from a long-term marriage, you're going to be trapped. You're going to get tired of the sex. It's going to be boring. She's going
It's
to
only
yell at
negative. Yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
all negative
Hmm.
until women and men our age open up. And I've been accused of oversharing a little bit on Instagram. Some of my more religious friends, Christian, you know the church lady types, right?
I do. Oh yeah.
I'm like, I'll like post a little something with, like, I don't know, like a little shoulder down and a little hair, like spiffing up for when hubby comes in the front door, and they're like, "I don't know if you should say that on Instagram." Like, good gravy, we're married. Like, we have to tell these women and men, like you don't, like, things don't go to die when you get married. A long-term
Mm-hmm.
relationship where you invest in each other, it stacks on
Hmm.
through
Yeah.
the years. It stacks on through the children. It stacks on even when you're going to go through terrible things. Guess what, people? You're going to go through terrible things whether you're sitting in your parents' basement, Netflix and chilling all the time, or you're out there having a real life and real adventures and a real
Yeah.
family and children who do think for a while you're crazy. But let me tell you, once they hit their mid 20s, they think you're
They
smart
come back.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm sure your oldest kids are like, "Wow, you were so right all the time. You were just so right."
Yeah. I'm
And
not ready
and
for that.
I had one who left the faith for a while and thought we didn't know anything, and he went to the other side for a while, and God bless Jordan Peterson for bringing him back, and as well as listening to finally some of the people who he thought were stupid before, and now he's like 1,000% in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, Paul, we're like lean a little left after him now. Like, ooh, like, geez, but like, seeing that your example makes the difference. And I'm
Yeah.
willing to overshare a little bit, and I only share what my husband gives me permission to share. I'm not doing anything silly. I'm not on there, with skin for likes. Somehow that's okay to do, is flaunt your body all over. How, who likes this? You slay, girl. How is that okay? And a woman fixing up her hair putting on something pretty saying, I can't wait till my husband comes through the door.
Yeah, it's like,
How
whoa,
is
frowned
whoa,
upon.
whoa,
that?
easy,
Yeah.
easy with that
Yeah.
sort of
How
radical
is
weirdness.
that?
So
Yeah,
an A to your chest, like, come on.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
How
you know
is
what's cool?
that the terrible thing?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that too because I've said plenty of times I'm a ginormous Jordan Peterson fanboy, um, a lot. But it's really funny you bring that up because there's a lot of young men who, when they listen to what Dr. Peterson talks about, I mean, it just changes their life because he has this just this way about it. It's just amazing. Like right now, I'm listening to his lecture series on Genesis, and it's phenomenal.
Yes.
Everybody
I've
should
listened
listen
to
to it.
that before. It's fabulous.
It's incredible, especially if you're not religious. You absolutely should
That's
listen to
correct.
it.
Because he was not religious at all. He's making some moves. Do you feel like he's kind of
Oh,
making some moves
I'm
toward
just
the good
waiting to
Lord?
announce. Yes, I'm just waiting to announce that he's willing to or go through his baptism and confirmation.
But
I'm just
like,
waiting. He's
but
almost
like
there.
he was not really. So like he again appeals to that young. Like these
Mhm.
people have not been raised with religion, and I
Yeah.
will say the one thing my husband and I always did. Um, we always went to church,
Mm-hmm.
and there was always some level of prayer talking about God in our home.
Mm-hmm.
We did. My kids started out at a Catholic school, but my older son, the one who's married and supporting his family, had severe learning disabilities. We had to go to a public
Mm.
school. He couldn't read in 5th grade. We couldn't
Wow.
figure out what the matter was. We had to seek specialized help. He did great. Again, he's driving a truck, supporting a family. It's the best thing in the world. But the the people who were a little younger than me who had kids like didn't keep up that religious even cultural point of view.
Yes.
I switched from being more culturally Catholic to way more intentionally Catholic once my husband had cancer.
Mm,
Like you can't almost
yeah.
die when you're 31 and not think of some real things about your life.
Mhm.
We both got a little more serious, probably a little earlier than a lot of our friends did because you feel your mortality more, right?
Yeah, it was a
So
wake-up
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
so there was a foundation that when my one kid kind of went off the rails, that foundation was there to kind of come back to. Um,
Mm,
and
yeah.
and and we're not again. It's like we do a few prayers as a family. Like I have a lot of very awesome friends who like say the rosary together every night, like go to daily mass, like God bless them. Like we have just not been able to make a certain level of devotion that we aspire to happen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll still get there. But like I grew up Catholic and I never remember ever my parents saying when I said I wanted to do X, going like, well, have you prayed about that? What do you think? What do you think God would think about that? Like that's something
Mm,
we really try to do with our kids, where God is in kind of like it's not like he's out here and something you do on Sunday and like, but bringing him into the conversation, bringing in how to live a Christian life in your daily life.
yeah.
Um, and honestly, the other thing is just as a mom, my husband again said very early on, you are the emotional barometer of our home.
Mm,
If you are not happy, this place is not happy.
no.
And that's the true meaning of the words happy wife, happy life. I
Yes.
know the toxic way to take it, like, oh, I got to do whatever she says. Well, my dad tried that. That didn't work. The
Yeah.
real meaning of happy wife, happy life is the mother sets the emotional tone of the family and honestly for the relationship, which is why we
Yeah.
women can change and our husbands will change without even knowing it because they are responding to us.
We are
Mhm.
simpletons. Yes, we
You're
are.
wonderful. You guys are the best. It's so simple. We're so
Well, we
complicated.
can
And
walk in from work
I
and
know.
read a room just
I
like
just tell you,
that.
I just need 3 things, and I'm more than happy and satisfied. That's about as far as I
it's
go.
so true. But we need 17 million things. And it's got to, one day it needs like this. My husband said that
But there's
too.
a
He's like,
certain order to those things too. You can't get in
yeah.
that order.
Or he'll be like, I took a note that you like this. And then I tried it, like, you didn't like it. Like, what the heck? I'm like, it's a different day. It's a different year. I'm a different person. We have this age child.
It
We
was
have
more
that age.
humid today. You didn't.
Yeah,
It's like,
like that's what we do. And he's like, I do not understand. I'm like, I know, but good thing I'm cute. So that's okay. Um, that's how this works. I started again, and I was thankful I found the resources I found that I decided right about when I hit late 30s, 40, my joy was my responsibility. And my joy came from how I faced what I was facing, and the joy of my relationships here on earth, but mostly my relationship with God. And
Mhm.
that changed. I've always been a naturally optimistic person, but that like kind of kicked it into another gear. Like, like, and that's really tested when your kid dies. Like he went through he was in pain every day of his life. And then he died, this
Ugh.
innocent, wonderful, beautiful child that I thought I had saved. Um, like that's rough. And then we adopted 3 more kids from Ukraine all at the same time, a sibling group of 3, 11, 3.5, and 1.5.
Holy
And that
cow.
also,
Oh my
woo,
goodness.
that's like graduate level parenting, guys, right up there to like do 3 and jump in with the birth order and do that. Like that was hard work, but like every day it was like, I'm choosing joy today. I'm going to make myself as happy as possible. I'm going to make my kids as happy as possible. I'm going to make my husband as not because he deserves it. He's given me the family I've always wanted. He's given me the ability to jump in and out of work as I want. He's so supportive. He's so loving. I mean, I told him, especially once after we adopted the 3 kids at one time, I'm like, listen, you can have, a clean house, laundry
Mhm.
done, or dinner on the table. Like, there's 3 things, pick 2 out of the 3 that are most important. I can't do 3 of them anymore. I'm done. He's like, do this and this. He's like, I'm teaching the children to do their own laundry. Guys, I haven't done a load of laundry that hasn't been for myself in like 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
My husband taught, he's like, why are you doing all the laundry? These
Yeah.
children are perfectly capable. Get them to do
Yeah.
the laundry,
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll just call him and go like, oh, it's such a rough day. I'm like, dinner's not going to happen. He's like, no problem. Stop and bring something home. Like he'd 1,000% rather have me
Present than
present,
stressing
Yeah.
over it.
relaxed,
Yeah.
dealing than being like
Yeah.
yelling at like, I gotta get dinner ready,
Well,
and
my
you all
wife's the
are
same
driving
way.
me
She's
insane.
like,
And blah, blah, blah.
well, the house needs to be clean. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. I'd rather sit down and like
Let's
enjoy
just
my time
let's
with
just
you.
relax.
But
Like
that's a
it's
Let's
good
okay.
point.
relax.
My
It's all
son's
right.
going to be 6 in August. I think it's time for him to do the laundry. That's a good
Like
point.
seven was
We
our
already have
drop
kids doing
dead.
laundry now. I got
7 was the
4 and
drop
3.
dead from start to finish. You can put them earlier on parts of it, but to take care of your own load from start to finish, I found about age 7. If you got a
See,
little more mature kid,
there you
you're
go.
good.
Hey, just get them.
If you
Just get
Step
them going.
stool.
Yeah,
There
just
you
get them
go.
going. Yeah.
if you we got the front ones. We got the front loaders, so there's no excuse on ours. They can
Yeah,
just
that's
go right
right.
in the
They can
front.
reach it. They can reach.
They can do
Absolutely.
that. And
I just
sometimes
see
the
his
boys
little
take a
feet
little
sticking out
longer.
of the top loader.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting though, that from what you just said, it made me think about what you were talking about earlier about those young men that are angry and everything. And
Oh, the DM guys.
well, yeah, because what they expect from, especially like you said, these red pilled guys that actually don't know anything, but they think they do because they listen to Andrew Tate or Kevin Samuel, and they're like, I know exactly how to handle them. What they misunderstand from these guys is that to ask or things like that of women, you have to be a certain type of man that is going to be able to receive those kind of things. I think that's a big missing point, right? Where they see,
Yes.
well, I expect a wife, like you said, I want to try. It's like, well, are you the sort of man that deserves to have a wife like that, right? And I think that's a big key with this. You could say the red pill community or anything like that. When with young guys, if ever because I've talked to, we have, I have a brother-in-law that's a little bit younger, just, younger guys, when we're talking, it's like, look, you have to become the man that this woman wants to be with, right? And she will do
And
these
and
things
and
out of
it's
love.
possible. It is possible. This is and this is some of my problem with some of the Christian community, Catholic otherwise. Like, well, let's all be celibate till we're 29, 30 years old.
Oh yeah.
And we
Oh
have
man.
enough money and we've gone and gotten our college degrees and our graduate degrees. Let's just keep all the kids, and then when they're 30, they can make a good decision. Like, you are setting up young people for failure. God did not mean for a young man and a young woman in the prime of their reproductive lives to be white knuckling it. It was bad enough white knuckling it as an engaged couple. It was
Yeah.
brutal. It was brutal. Like you should not be doing that to these young women and young men. If a young woman and a young man is raised with a proper mindset and is doing the work necessary. Again, my husband came from nothing. We had zero money, but he was the hardest working human being I had ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
He was mature minded and of the proper thing. He did not expect me to live with him before marriage.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what the goal was. He again, we were both probably a little more culturally Catholic at that time, but like he's like, I would never disrespect you by doing that. If we're gonna be together, we're gonna be together the right way. So the hardworking that, um, and then just he was always on a relentless pursuit of his excellence, his improvement, his career, his stuff. And like he kept me apprised of it and invited me along the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is so attractive. I don't care if you're 21 or you're 30, but your options are going to be lower as a 30-year-old man and woman. Now,
Yeah.
men have it a little better, right? Because you
Yeah.
guys can screw around a little bit in your 30s and you're still going to be able to, at a 30-year-old be like, okay, I'm sorry, I got my mind together now and everything's good and I'm picking you and we are doing things the right way.
Right, because
It
guys take a
doesn't
little longer to
sound
mature and get established too.
and we women understand that because, we've seen our whole lives. It is kind of true women mature faster than men.
Yeah.
I've got a 17-year-old daughter who can run my entire household, and I have a 15-year-old son who's over there playing something on the computer, and he'll stay up till 6 a.m. and forget he has to go to work at 9 a.m. the next morning and stumble. Like, because he's a
Sounds
15-year-old
about right.
boy. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a
Yeah.
different brain development. So like I'm not against a 30-year-old guy. He can have a quality woman. He can have screwed up. I'm not against a girl who can screw up. But if you're like, I want a guy who doesn't have a high body count. I want a guy who's looking for a serious woman and has that work ethic. I will tell you, my seriously religious friends, like the ones who homeschooled and then their kids went to those religious colleges, those kids are all getting married at 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
They all are. Those good boys are now all taken. They're all off the market. Those quality women who see their potential and are locking, they're off the market.
Well, it's almost taboo to get married so young, and it's those traditional morals that push to it. I think I was 23 when I got married. Like
Yeah. I mean, I was 23 when I got
most of my
married.
friends are just now
22.
even taking that leap at
Right.
30, 32. It's
Yeah.
like they're
Right.
not dating for the first time,
Yeah,
really.
and what's
Sure.
interesting too is with like you were saying, Carl, like yes, men tend to mature maybe a little bit behind women do, but one thing I know that helps a guy mature very quickly is having children,
Oh,
right?
for
Having
sure.
It's a
children,
wake up call for
it
sure.
is,
You
but
have to.
again, you want the key to really become an adult. And I've said this, like, yeah, like you don't really become an adult until you're like married and have a child as a man, in my opinion, because again, nothing is asked of you in your life until you go into those things. Like, yes, are you asked of things at work? Yeah, but
Well, as men, we're always taught that you've got to be the strong one, the head of the household, the provider. I mean, no matter what happens, you've got to be the rock kind of thing. And that responsibility is never really laid on you until you don't have that choice of, having a dependent at home or having a wife that you need to provide for, or especially the kids, the dependents,
mm,
it's a wake up call. I mean, when my wife lost her job being 8 months pregnant and I was only
Oof.
making like 30 grand a year, and it was just like, oh crap, what are we going to do? And
yeah,
it's just like, we made it work.
you
She
figure it
suddenly was
out.
a stay-at-home mom because she didn't have a choice. I mean, who's going to hire the 8-month pregnant person to then go on a
Right.
maternity leave? It just
Right.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can say there's discrimination laws all you want, but it's what happened, and
Yeah,
we
Well, yeah.
made it work. I
My
mean, yeah,
my one of my brothers, again, I'm the oldest of 8. One of my brothers, he's the only one of us well, there's 2 that didn't graduate from college. He didn't graduate from college. He and his girlfriend got pregnant while they were both in college. Um, they went back to their parents' houses while they had the son. They kind of got their stuff together after a year and a half, 2 years.
mm-hmm.
He married her. They went on to have 3 more kids. They're a fabulous family. Um, he has a bunch of friends who he hung out with that ended up graduating from that college in the very prestigious program he was in that he didn't finish.
Hmm.
And a bunch of them are still single. My brother's going to be 50 this year. They're
Wow.
still single. And he's like, they're great to hang out with if we go to Vegas for like 3 days. He's like, but something's not right with them. He's
Well,
like,
what's
they're
missing in their
still
life? Yeah.
they're still that same person when we were 22. They're just like a 50-year-old version of them.
A
And he
hundred
goes,
percent,
my
exactly.
Like they're
my
stuck in a
brother,
loop.
my brother started a business because he had that wife and that baby to
Hmm.
provide for, and he
Right.
had no choice, and he had to go
Mhm.
hustle. And now then he brought in another brother, then he brought in my other brother, and now they have a business that's supporting 3 families. And he's the one who didn't graduate from college
That's
because
amazing.
he had to get on it
It's
and
sink
do
or
that.
swim. Yeah.
Well, Paul was at the FBI Academy, and he had been in the Navy, and he thought he was in decent shape because you have to do fit stuff for the Navy.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
I'm, at home with, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old with my parents, waiting to see where I'm going to live. And literally, like the first week, he like called me. He's like, Carla, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. He's like, the PT stuff is way worse than the Navy. Like, I got to do like X number of chin ups. He's like, I don't think I can do it. He's like, so they made him do extra PT. He had to get up earlier in the day and then like do extra PT. This was at the Quantico Marine Base in Virginia. When the black flag was out, they wouldn't make the Marines go do PT, but they made the FBI agents go do PT. Like it was like 80% humidity. It was July. It was like, 90 degrees. Like my German husband was dying in the South there.
I'll take some 90 degrees right now. But
Yeah, I could
Like,
too. Yeah, God.
oh, are you guys in Phoenix? Are you guys in
Houston.
Arizona
Or
somewhere? Yeah,
Houston.
Houston.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, same thing. But
yeah.
like he told me later, he's like, it crossed my mind like 5 times that week. Like, I might not be able to do this. What if I quit? What could I do? Could I I know I've sent out 100 law resumes in Chicago and did get one bite, but maybe I could do. He's like, I didn't have a choice. I had to get up. I had to get it done. I had to figure it out. Like you were at home living with your parents. Like I had 2 kids. I had to figure it out. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, the male that drive and like women can empower that in their man.
Hey guys, so you're gonna see a little bit of a weird audio thing. We had a mix up, but we need to let Carla go because, like she said, she has these wonderful little children that she needs to take care of. So, um, I just want to say this was one of my favorite episodes. This was amazing. I
That
mean,
was good.
I think really it's maybe our best. It'll probably only be downhill from here. I mean, this is incredible. So, for if people listen to our episode with you and they want to get more of this kind of stuff, Carla, where can people find
So
you?
right now I am on Instagram at Don't Become Roommates 1989, but I'm starting a YouTube channel next week.
Oh
Wow.
Yes,
yes.
good old Allie from Real Femme Sapien has been after me, and people have been asking. So I'm putting the 15-year-old techie to work, and I'm going to start that up. We're going to be doing group panel podcasts on
Oh my
like
God, it's gonna be
the
awesome.
the good life wife, helping women become better wives, better mothers, making themselves be in a good position to find a good man as a single woman. We're going to give that advice to people my kids' age who are looking, and we just want to help combat that sense of hopelessness, that anger. There is hope. There are good people out there. You can find them. Like, I want everybody to have what I have. I mean, I hope I
Yes.
can convey
Yeah.
to you, like, I love my life. I love my husband. I love my children. It's the greatest source of joy in my life, and I would have missed out on so much if I had taken that advice to, go be a partner and be the first woman president. I would missed out on the greatest sense of joy and satisfaction that I have literally daily, like literally every day. I thank God for the man he sent me and for the life we've built together. And I just think it's something everyone deserves. And I don't like the way this world is trying to keep them at odds and talk them out of it and make them, they're only good for one thing. And we can't deal with all your hypergamy, and women, we can't deal with all your toxic, whatever. Like, stop it. We are meant to be together. We are better together and apart, and healthy marriages and families are going to save the world.
100%. And if
Well
you're all
spoken.
listening, go check out our wonderful friend, the Royal Femme Sapien. Allie's amazing. We love her very much. So, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, and then also you can find us on Apple and Spotify. I'm more than confident we'll have Carla on. Definitely more than once more. We'll have her on as many times as possible because this is great. We can keep going, but like I said, she has little ones. We have little ones, so we got to go. So we love you guys. Thank you so much for checking us out, and we will see y'all next week. Later.